Earn your place in the Celtic Otherworld in nOg, a mathy tableau builder featuring a cool theme and fantastic artwork.
nOg comes from the team of Isaac Shalev and J6 Slingerland and features artwork from Marlies Brendis and Bridget Indelicato. It's being published by our sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild, after a successful Kickstarter.
This abstract card game plays 1 to 5 players, and it works well at all player counts. While the box lists playing time is under an hour, every game that we've played, except for solo ones, has gone longer than that due to AP or analysis paralysis.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about in this game with lots of options, which is probably where the age recommendation of 13 plus comes from. We think you could go lower than that, though, as the mechanics are not that complicated. It's just the variety of options that really makes up the game's weight.
So in Celtic myths, Tir na Nog is the Otherworld, the realm of the Fae. In this game, the path to the Otherworld has opened again, and players will be sending storytellers on journeys, drafting cards representing the adventures they had, and using those to build a saga while trying to complete their 3 geas, or destinies. Now, mechanically, you will be drafting cards from a grid by first placing your storytellers between 2 cards, then drafting from the cards you've selected and placing them into a 3-row tableau, left to right. Each row has its own scoring system, and you also get bonus points at the end for collecting groups of cards in the same color.
Earlier this month, I tossed up an Instagram reel where we did a quick unboxing of Tir na Nog. So you can check that out to get a look at what you get with the Smith-based game. You can find a link in the show notes.
So component quality here is good, but there is a lot of air in that box. The game could have come in a box 1/4 this size. Now, we do know that there is an expansion coming for this game. The cards currently have icons on them that aren't actually used without that expansion, so there may be a chance that the box is big enough to fit the expansion, but we don't know for sure.
Now, what you do get in this oversized box are some really solid playing pieces. Cardboard counters that are clear and easy to read, oversized geas cards, and a deck of adventure cards. Card quality is good, and the rulebook is clear and concise.
The only complaint we have, component-wise, is that the geas cards could be a little clearer and the examples on them could be significantly better. We even spotted some cards where the math was wrong. The important thing to know here is to always go with the text on the cards and not the pictures.
So to start a game of Tir na Nog, everyone starts grabs the playing pieces in their color. The group decides which geas cards to use, selecting 1 top card, 1 middle card, and 1 bottom card. Everyone starts with a hand of 5 cards, and you build an initial grid of story cards on the table, the size of which is based on the player count. Each story card has a value from 0 to 8 and comes in one of 4 elements represented by a color.
So starting with the player who last told the story, players place one of their storyteller markers on an open spot between 2 cards. The other players follow in clockwise order until each player has placed 3 storytellers.
Now, in the same order, players each draft one of the cards that one of their storytellers is touching, taking the card into their hand and removing the storyteller. If, because of other folks drafting cards, it ends up that a storyteller is no longer touching any cards, they are considered lost in the Otherworld. And then, after everyone else has finished drafting, any lost storytellers get to select any one leftover card.
Every time you draft a card from the table, you must then immediately play a card into your tableau next to one of your 3 geas cards. Cards must be placed from left to right, but can go into any of the 3 rows. In general, though, only a maximum of 5 cards in each row.
Now, Sean says in general because this is an exception-based card game. About half of the cards in the deck have special abilities on them. These break the rules in a number of different ways. Their value can change based on other cards in your tableau. You can swap or remove cards, or they can let you place your storytellers in new ways, like at the corner of 4 cards instead of 2, and more.
After each player has drafted and then played 3 cards, the round ends. Remaining cards in the Otherworld are discarded, and every player discards 1 card from their hand. Start player then passes to the left, and a new grid of cards is laid out.
This continues for a total of 5 rounds, with players drafting and playing exactly 15 cards each. At the end of the 5th round, players will look at their completed tableau, their personal epic saga, and score it based on the geas cards chosen at the beginning of the game.
So each geas card scores in a different way, like many include special placement rules as well for the cards in the row. These include things like add up your even cards and your odd cards, but score the lowest total between the two, or getting points for having matching colors of cards in the same column, or start with 25 points and subtract a point for every card placed, but don't count duplicates, or score the value of every card, but they have to be placed lowest to highest, and so on.
After players have calculated their points for completing their guesses, you then score for elements, which are sets of matching colored cards orthogonally adjacent to each other. You get points for having the most, second most, or third most of a color, and the actual points are based on the player count.
Total everything up, and the player with the most points wins. The game also includes a solo mode where you complete against an AI opponent that plays very smoothly and quickly. They get a set number of points depending on the guess cards you choose to use, and then also compete for color majority at the end. Now, warning, this AI is tough to beat, as they tend to score the guess as if they missed the maximum points by only 1 or 2 cards.
Now, the big thing people need to know about Tir na nOg is it's a mathy game, and that's going to be the biggest deciding factor on people like it or not. While this game has a great theme, very cool artwork, and some thematic tie-in with the card abilities, in the end, it's all about building a grid of number cards, following a randomized set of rules, and scoring opportunities with additional points scored for completing sets of the same color. It's thinky, and there are a lot of options every turn, and it's going to cause AP in most players, even those who don't normally spend a lot of time thinking when playing games.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm going to play Math the Game, and don't get me wrong, I really dig this game, but if I'm going to play Math the Game, I might as well play it with some pretty artwork and Celtic folktale tie-ins. Like, the theming actually sold this one for me. It made me be excited about getting it to the table, and once I got it to the table, I loved it.
Yeah, after playing it myself, I think Mo summed it up very well in his initial overview when he described this as a game that could have been made by Rainer Nitze. It wasn't, but it's very much that kind of game.
Yeah, note the math here isn't hard. It's basic addition and subtraction and maybe some multiplication by numbers less than 10. But it can get complicated if you have multiple cards whose values is based on the other cards in your tableau. Now, thankfully, the game provides counters to show what value variable cards have, as well as tokens for showing if a card changes color. I know in one game, every time I added a single card to my top row, it affected 3 other cards in my tableau. In the last round, it took me a long time to figure out my best option on where to play. This game has a very puzzle, deduction, logic puzzle kind of feel.
Yeah, and I do love that you don't have to keep track of any of those variable cards, like either in your own tableau or across the table in someone else's. Those markers are super useful, and I think they actually help with the game flow.
Now, with players who know what they're getting into, Tir na nOg has been a hit so far, a big hit. My family digs the deduction and puzzle style games, so this was right up our alley. Now, while I do wish there was something a little bit more thematic happening, I do love the game for what it is. I have enjoyed every play of Tir na nOg, and I'm looking forward to more.
Now, I think for me, based on the tone and theme, I want this to be a little more light and casual. It's a game about fae and mysticism, yet in order to play, you need to be fixated on details, calculating various options, and doing math, as well as working to block and steal cards to prevent your opponents from achieving their goals.
Okay, I will agree. I like the theme. I'm a sucker for fairy tales and folklore, and the artwork is pretty. But it does feel like one of the most insert theme here games that we've played in a long while. And the theme and the mechanics don't quite gel. That said, I still hold that if I'm going to play Math the Game, you might as well make it pretty folktale Math the Game.
Now, one thing that does keep me looking forward to playing again and diving into this game even further is the different gash cards. Even playing with each set in the game once is going to take some time. And then you have all the possible combinations between the different tops, bottoms, and middles. And I also dig the fact the game did include a first set, good for learning the game, that doesn't feature any of the more complicated calculations.
Yeah, there's a ton of variables here, lots of replay value. This is not a game that's going to get stale quickly.
Now, another detail about this game, and something you might want to think about when teaching or playing the game, is that if you misread something, you might as well not play. Skip or misunderstand one word, and you're done. This is not a forgiving game. I would recommend going through those Geas cards very clearly and making sure that everyone understands the end game scoring before you get started.
Yeah, this is big. Honestly, really big. Some of the wording on the Geas cards could be a little better. And as noted earlier, some of the examples on them are actually wrong. Reading through each of the 3 Geas cards, your top, middle, and the bottom, before you start using each of them before anyone places a storyteller can be very important. You need to make sure everyone is on the same page and make sure they're clear for everyone, because it is not fun to realize partway through a game that you've been building your tableau completely wrong.
Yeah, we've managed to mess this up multiple times. Even just last night, I was playing a solo game where I had misread one of the Geas cards. Mo happened to stop by to watch my solo game and said, "Wait, why are you playing a 7 there? What are you doing?" And I looked and he explained to me what I was doing wrong, and I was so frustrated I scrapped the game and started over again because...
Yeah, and unfortunately, when I was doing something about 3/4 of the way through the game, I realized that I had missed lowest in one word in my top Geas card, which crushed the scoring for that entire row.
Overall, I really dig Tir na nOg. It's a great card drafting, math-heavy set collection tableau builder. As a 1 to 5 player abstract strategy game, this is fantastic. You usually don't get games with this feel that works so well without the 5 players. A lot of those Nitsia games are, 2-3 players. That's where they're best. Where it does fail for me, though, is fulfilling the storytelling promise, right? Like, not only is it about the Celtic Feywild, it's about sending storytellers to the Feywild and the other realms. Like, where is that? My tableau of different colored cards doesn't feel like an epic tale at the end. It just feels like a set of cards and getting points for doing it well.
Yeah, I love this game. It's one of my favorites that I've played so far in 2024, but don't go into this expecting epic storytelling and tight thematic tie-ins. You will be disappointed.
It's math the game, and it's a great math game, but it is a math game, not a Fey game.
Yeah. Now, if you do dig abstract strategy games and mathy games, this is great. Go get it. If you're a fan of Nitsia style games, you're going to love Tir na nOg. Just watch out for that AP. If you've got an entire group of math-heavy gamers who like this kind of thing, you might sit there staring at the cards a little more than double the time in the box. Because I got to say, trying to figure out the optimum move every time does sometimes take time.
So I will say solo play is great if you're AP prone. You can take as long as you want, as long as you manage to clear the table in time for dinner.
Fair.
Now, if you are looking for a storytelling game about Celtic myths, you aren't going to find that in Tir na nOg. While each Geas card does have a story on the back and the cards are all mythological places, heroes, and characters, none of that really matters. You are drafting and placing cards for their numbers or abilities, not because you are telling a tale of Cuchulainn.
And that drafting mechanic, I really love it. The way that you place your storyteller between 2 cards, and then other people place theirs, and then you come around and you are going to be able to only get one of those 2 cards, and it's based on what other people have played. Like, there's a lot of variables that go in there for bluffing and for having to adapt your strategy that I really enjoy.
For everyone else, you probably have already made up your mind if this game's right for you or not. Like, I think our description of it's pretty clear and gives you a really good idea of how the game feels and plays. But I do recommend give this game a shot. As I said, our family is into deduction games and logic puzzles, that type of game. So I knew it was going to be perfect for some of the people we play with. But honestly, it won over a couple I wasn't so sure would dig it. Just make sure you do sit down and play it. Everyone knows what they're getting into. Don't, like, when I put this on our menu for one of our local public play events, the first time I did it, it was like, journey to the Celtic Feywild to do this and this. And Dan's like, no, you got to change that, because you are going to get people trying to play this game that are expecting something completely different than what you just alluded to. Now, I'm a fan of mathy games, and that's part of why Tir na nOg was a hit for me. What's a math-heavy game you enjoy? Leave a comment wherever you found this review and let us know what your favorite mathy game is.
Well, I've done the math, and it tells me it's time to promote our newsletter. Head over to tabletopbellhop.com and click on Get Our Newsletter. Mo sends out one of these each week, which gives you links to all of the content that we've published in the last week, a heads up on our next podcast recording, and a gaming or game night tip or 2.